Everybody has something in their life that they always come back to. For some people, it's a book or a story that engaged them emotionally for years. For some people, they go see their favorite movie and maybe make a routine out of it. Many people have that one album that they always go back and listen to just because they love it or because it gives them some comfort or reminds them of a happy memory. For me, that something is a video game. For the past decade, I've played plenty of games and enjoyed them, but nothing has engaged with me, stuck with me, or resonated with me more than Undertale. To say that this game changed my life would be an understatement. I've made incredible friendships, met so many wonderful people, and because of this game, I've actually gotten to fulfill a life dream of mine and make YouTube videos and content for a living. But through all of that, the spark of love that I have for this game has never once faltered. In fact, it's less like a spark now and more like a raging fire. And the intensity of the hearth has continuously bellowed throughout the years, as the depths of my appreciation for this seemingly simple game only continue to increase. And now, the successor and parallel story to Undertale, Deltarune, has been released to immense success with more chapters coming in the future. And don't get me wrong, I love Deltarune too, but something always keeps me transfixed on Undertale. This game is incredibly special to me, and today, for the 10th anniversary of my favorite game ever made, I wanted to really lay it all out. I want to critically analyze this game and why I think it has stood the test of time as a masterpiece and one of the greatest video games of all time. As the person who's played Undertale more times than, well, anybody, what is it about this game that has made me continue to love it and has elevated that love to adoration as the years go by? To do that, what you're about to watch is the ultimate deep dive into Undertale as a game on every single layer. So sit down, get comfy, and let's get into why Undertale is a timeless masterpiece. So, approaching a review of this game is a little difficult. Undertale succeeds and does incredibly interesting things on several different layers of narrative, from the inherent game narrative to the astounding meta-narrative and complete destruction of the fourth wall. When I reviewed Undertale Yellow, that game didn't rely nearly as much on meta-narrative, and as such, I was able to just kind of copy a review template from the YouTubers and creators who inspired me to do reviews in the first place. Undertale is different though, so I'm going to tackle this game in layers. Imagine a gigantic onion, and now we can put Sans' face on it. Onion Sans, like the character in the game. At least I think that was their name. Onions have multiple layers, and for this video, I'm going to divide Undertale into 3 layers and talk about them individually. The first layer, the outer shell, is all the merits Undertale has as just a video game. This will be all of your video gamey things like the general story, music, settings, the characters. Then, the next layer, the middle section, will be all about how the writing utilizes the uniqueness of video games as a medium to create a fantastic meta-narrative and do incredibly interesting things with that face. And then, at the core of the onion, I have a special segment reserved for what I consider to be some of the most compelling writing and interesting and unique player-to-character dynamics ever put in a piece of media. This third layer will focus almost exclusively on the relationship the player has with the main villain of the game, Flowey, in such an interesting way. So hopefully through this wonderful onion sans, you too can appreciate the game in the same way that I do. So let's start eating this onion together. Actually, that sounds like a terrible idea. Eating raw onion sounds pretty gross. So instead, we can pretend this is one of those delicious chocolate lava cakes that those pizza places always send you at like lukewarm temperatures. Much better. So Undertale's a video game. And this exterior layer is the most important one. If the game itself wasn't fun to play or wasn't engaging, then unfortunately it would prevent the really juicy stuff in the middle from ever being appreciated. After all, we play video games to have a good time, and thankfully, Undertale is a great time, even if you choose to not interact with it on a deeper level, or if you're just looking for something easily digestible. The overarching scenario is as follows. A long time ago, there was a war between humans and monsters. Humans won out, and as a result, they trapped the monsters underground in a place known as, well, the underground. Go figure. 7 human sages ripped straight out of Zelda created a barrier around the underground to prevent the monsters from ever escaping. And in order to break this barrier, the matching power of 7 human souls would be needed. Crossing the barrier is possible, but only for someone with a human soul. See, in this world, the soul is an intrinsically important thing tied to a living being. Humans have powerful souls and are depicted as having various colors that you'll learn are tied to characteristics. Monster souls are less powerful and are depicted as colorless. The reason the war happened at all is because monsters have the innate ability to absorb human souls to become incredibly powerful, and humanity feared this power. Cut forward to 20X-teen, and the game's intro shows us a human child falling into a cave on Mount Ibat, a place where people are said to go missing, and is actually a secret one-way entrance to the underground. The game starts from this position, letting you name the fallen child, and then you go on your way. The first character you meet is Flowey, a talking flower who seems incredibly nice, but then immediately turns on you after teaching you the basic mechanics of the game. Flowey shows his philosophy immediately, that the world is kill or be killed, and almost manages to take you out right away before you get saved by another character named Toriel. She introduces herself as the caretaker of the ruins, the first major area of the game. The ruins are a very tame tutorial area with low-power monsters and plenty of tutorials on how the game works. Of course, Toriel's name is even a pun on tutorial, as she literally handholds you through several rooms. Right from the start, Undertale demonstrates the kind of writing style that persists throughout the whole entire game. It lives and breathes comedic elements, very much inspired by the writing of the Mother series and Earthbound in particular, a game Toby Fox was an enormous fan of. After all, he even got his start in game development with various Earthbound ROM hacks, with the most popular and infamous one being the Earthbound Halloween hack in 2008. Though I'd say the writing of Undertale is quite a lot better than the self-admittedly edgy writing that 16-year-old Toby put into those games. This ironic, comedic, and quirky humor is the lifeblood of Undertale's writing, and a substantial part of this game experience definitely hinges on it. And even if it's not your thing, I think most of the jokes land consistently for most players, though it may go a bit overboard at times for some. Since Ruins is all about explaining the game mechanics to the player, then now's a good time to cover the battle system. While incredibly simple, I cannot believe something like this had never been thought of before. Undertale takes a traditional, simple turn-based RPG and mashes it together with the bullet hell style gameplay of Touhou Project, one of Toby's favorite game series. This creates a fantastic back and forth dynamic in the combat system, where every enemy feels varied and individual because they all have unique attacks and patterns from each other. It also keeps you mechanically invested, which is a criticism many have had of the old school turn-based RPGs of the 90s. Undertale throws one little more piece of secret sauce into the mix though, and adds in the ability to converse with monsters, inspired directly from the Shin Megami Tensei series. I've never actually beaten one of those games before, but I did play a bit of Shin Megami Tensei 4, and the monster chatting system was one of the highlights for me. But Undertale really makes it its own. In fact, it's the core backbone behind the game's impressive morality system. The entire game is built around talking to monsters, getting to know them as people, and in order to show them mercy through the spare command. Again, this mechanic never really gets dull because Undertale is a pretty short game that has a healthy variety of monster encounters and even multiple different ways to spare them that makes the system continuously fun and fresh to interact with. I really enjoy when RPGs give mechanical skill a place to shine. It's what I adore about game series like Mario and Luigi. As sure, my numbers go up as I grow more powerful and I unlock skills, but I also feel like I'm being rewarded for being just better at the game's systems. I'd say the only part of the combat system that doesn't feel quite as deep is the fighting. In this game, you have 4 options in a battle: fight, act, item, or spare. Spare is just used to either run away from encounters that you fought before to save you time, or to show monsters mercy after acting with them properly. Acting, like I said before, is the core of the system, and fighting itself is a mechanic without terribly much depth. You get this reticle? I think it's a reticle. I don't even think Toby knows exactly what this is supposed to be, because this thing shows up in Deltarune and is just called Undertale Combat Thing in that game's files. But yeah, combat in this game comes down to timing a button press in the middle of the combat thing, and that's really it. No magic, no real variety, there's not even a defend command. The only variety you get is the amount of reticles that appear, which is controlled by the type of weapon you have equipped. You can get multi-reticle weapons that transform the game's combat into something kind of akin to the rhythmic timing of Mother 3's combat system, but it lacks the dynamic music component of that game. However, here's the thing. This system is a bit on the simple side and would get kind of tiring, but you ultimately barely use this thing, as the acting is such a fun thing to do that you seldom ever really click fight except in the extremely rare scenarios where you need to. So I don't really think that this system's simplicity is a downside at all, at least in the context of this game. Due to the game's short length too, and how fun the bullet hell enemy attacks are, I think this game's battle mechanics are basically perfect for what this game is trying to be. It of course leaves room for expansion, which is clear as day by how much Deltarune innovates on it, but what's here is not only good enough, but shining with creativity. Again, I can't state enough how enjoyable the bullet hell mechanics fused with traditional RPG mechanics are as a concept, and throwing the monster talking on top of that creates a system that I don't think I can ever really tire of. Other than that, there's not really many mechanics to speak of in this game. Overworld movement is incredibly simple, no run button, and just a menu with items that you can use on the field. It's incredibly self-explanatory. Not having a run button seems like it could be an issue, and admittedly on repeat playthroughs you do find yourself wishing the movement speed was maybe just a little higher. But generally, I find the construction and layout of the rooms to actually suit the lack of a run button just fine. One time, I played a mod of the game that just gave me the Deltarune run button, and it was completely out of control and really did not fit the game at all. That is to say, I think the design of the areas make up for the simplicity of the movement, and I find that it's completely serviceable. It didn't need to be anything more than it was, and it never really got in the way for me. Once you get all up to date with the game's mechanics, you eventually reach the ruins in Toriel's house, and after exploring and chatting with her enough, you find the means to leave. Toriel, however, doesn't want you to, exclaiming that she's let others through here and they all perish as a result. In order to stop you from leaving, Toriel engages you in a battle. This is the first major morality test in this game, as nothing's stopping you from defeating Toriel in a battle and killing her to move on. But through enough careful examination of the battle system and all the options you have available to you, you'll find that repeatedly selecting spare and doing absolutely nothing will eventually get her to give up and let you through. No matter which way you choose, she warns you that a character named Asgore must not be allowed to take your soul, and you'll soon leave the ruins. From this point, Undertale's main narrative takes a backseat, and you'll pick up pieces of lore and world building from various characters and various places that you talk to, as you traverse towards the end of the Underground. Instead, the focus becomes incredibly character-driven. This was already the case with Toriel, but every single area has a major character that is the main draw and appeal of that area. You'll explore the frigid tundras of Snowdin and be met with the iconic skeleton brother duo of Sans and Papyrus, named after the comic Sans and Papyrus fonts. After that, the solemn, quiet waters of Waterfall, and you'll meet Undyne, the captain of the Royal Guard of the Underground. And after that, you have the magma-filled halls of Hotland, where you meet the royal scientist, Dr. Alphys, and her creation, a human eradication robot that also doubles as the ultimate warrior of capitalism, Mettaton. And only after all of that do you reach the final area of the game, New Home, where Asgore lives, and where the game will come to a close. I went through all of these quickly because I want to talk about all of the characters all in depth, and it's important to know the context of the story as a whole before getting into their individual personalities. Before that though, Undertale's locales really stand out in my mind. Every single area has a very distinct color palette that makes them instantly recognizable from each other and stand out in my mind. Ruins is this magenta brick labyrinth. Snowdin is this off-white, bluish, snowy tundra with green trees. Waterfall has almost luminescent water at times, and other times has this blackish water that makes it feel swampy and mysterious, complete with water droplets from the ceiling that double as both rain and a faint night sky. And Hotland, well, it's a fire area with steam vents, but the real draw is the core sub-area with the neon blue and red lights with this awesome glowing liquid thing, giving the whole place an eerie glow. New Home, by comparison, is colorless and is a palette swap of ruins, making the end of the journey akin to the beginning. Visually, the game does way more than you'd expect with the style it goes for. Undertale's visuals are directly inspired by that early 16-bit era, thinking of games like Final Fantasy IV and of course Earthbound, but many places in the game have a quaint beauty to them despite all the silly and sometimes scrungly sprites. Scrungly isn't a word, I just made that up, but I think it's a good descriptor for the character sprites in this game. They're always oozing with personality and charm, and I think that gives the game an extremely unique look. The underground as a whole feels very lived in, and there's life around every corner. Once you arrive in New Home, the main plot suddenly kicks back in. On your walk to Asgore, the monsters explain the story of their people. A long time ago, a human child fell into the ruins and was adopted by Asgore and Toriel together, and grew up alongside their own child, Asriel. However, one day, the human child grew fatally ill and eventually passed away. Asriel took their soul and merged with it and crossed through the barrier with the newfound power and arrived at a human village. Asriel decided not to fight them and returned back to the underground and died in Asgore's garden from his wounds. Asgore, in a fit of rage, declared war on humanity and that every single human who fell into the underground through Mount Ibat would be killed, and eventually they'd gather enough souls to shatter the barrier and return to the surface. This legend paints Asgore as this incredibly imposing and powerful figure, but what you find of him is very different. Let's start with that character analysis now, shall we? Asgore is hyped up through the entire game to be the baddest guy there is. Toriel talks about him like he's a borderline demonic figure that hunts down humans mercilessly, but Papyrus and Undyne both give different accounts of what he's like in person. And eventually, only at the very end of the game, do you actually get to find out what he's like. Asgore is a sad, broken man. Truthfully, despite being statistically far and away the most powerful monster around, he doesn't like fighting and really doesn't want to do anything with it. But because of the circumstances and the decision he made while still reeling from the traumatic experience of losing both of his children in a single night, he's lost everything. He feels shackled to his declaration that humans must be eradicated, but truthfully, he feels incredible shame over what he's had to do. Toriel left him because of his decision and sealed herself into the ruins to get away from it all. This is a man that's at the end of his rope, so to speak. He believes he is beyond mercy, and in one of the game's most iconic set pieces, even destroys your mercy button when you face him, forcing you to fight him to the bitter end. He is an incredibly complicated character, and an interesting subversion of the expectations you have about him throughout the entire game. You'd think he'd be this big, imposing figure, but no, that's not what you get with him. You get an incredibly conflicted, morally gray character who has made an incredible amount of mistakes, but ultimately you are given the choice at the end of the fight, just like you always are, to spare him or kill him. I remember the first time I got to this part, I actually sat here for a while thinking about what I should do. Asgore himself encourages you to kill him and take his soul and escape, but is that because he thinks it's the best thing for everyone, or even for you? Or is it because he's lost hope in his life and just wants a way out? Well, while I sit here and mull it over, there's other characters to talk about. Toriel is someone you spend a lot of time with in the beginning of the game, only for her to basically disappear through the rest of it. As such, a lot of her further development is stuff you learn about through other characters. She's incredibly motherly and protective, as you find out at the beginning, but she has a lot of internal conflict about how she left the Underground's public eye as the former queen. Due to Asgore's plan, she felt she had to leave and couldn't be with him anymore. But you come to realize that she also had to grieve the loss of her two children basically alone as well, and it makes a lot of her seemingly overprotective qualities make sense. She desperately yearns to have a child figure in her life again, something she was robbed of. And yet, every human who falls into the underground eventually wanted to leave her again. But you learn she is also incredibly lonely and longing for friendship, as you'll find out through her interactions with Sans through the ruins door. Sans is a complicated and mysterious character, and even to this day, there's a lot of mysteriousness about him. He and Papyrus just appeared one day in Snowdin without much explanation, and he always seems to have this feeling around him that he knows much more than he lets on, and masks that with the very funny antics and silly charades that he and his brother put you through. There's a part of the game where Sans opens up about meeting Toriel through the ruins door, and how he promised to her that he'd protect the next human who came through. And Sans, just for a moment, switches off the humorous facade with a cold-faced expression, telling you that he could have ended you immediately if he wanted to. He always feels mysterious and like he's far more knowledgeable and powerful than he lets on, but these are the aspects of his character that you'll only learn throughout repeated playthroughs. Papyrus, on the other hand, is a lot more outward about who he is. He's loud, hot-headed, but yet has a very emotionally sensitive side as well that makes you think he's surprisingly self-aware about his antics and his persona. He desperately wants to be a part of the Royal Guard, but that's mostly because he longs for friendship and someone who values it, and he's one of the most compelling characters in the game. He's a ton of fun to learn more about and interact with, has some of the best jokes and some of the best humor in the game, and is the glue that allows you to get you to know Undyne. Undyne is a powerful captain of the Royal Guard and a purely antagonistic force throughout Waterfall before you can eventually find out more about her and get to know her through Papyrus. Eventually, you two can become friends and you'll learn that she's a protective and surprisingly caring figure who would do basically anything to protect her friends and her people, like Alphys. Alphys is complicated. She's super nerdy and shy and awkward, and spends a lot of time communicating with you both directly through phone calls and indirectly through text messages, which she forgets you can see. Eventually, you find out that the whole scenario with Mettaton was a farce, and that she created false dangerous scenarios because she still wanted you to desperately appreciate her, but ultimately realizes that it was wrong to do that. Still, you weren't actually in any real danger, and the comedy of those scenarios with Mettaton is some of the most fun in the entire game, but she still feels great shame over that. It's clear that she hides something deeper and feels great insecurity about something in particular, but it's not clear to the player what exactly that is. All of these characters have something in common. They're not black and white. Well, I mean, they literally are in the game's battle system, but morally, they have struggles, and they've all made mistakes. They're all deep characters with incredibly well-defined personalities, and seeing them interact with you and with each other is one of the best aspects of Undertale as a game. This game lives and dies by the characters, and if you look at Undertale's reception, it is clear. These are some of the most beloved video game characters ever created. People absolutely adore these characters, not to mention the incredibly strong supporting cast. I didn't even mention in-depth characters like Napstablook, Mettaton, Muffet. This game has so many incredibly strong character moments and just fantastic writing across the board. They feel like real people. They're complicated, but they're also funny, endearing, and just entertaining to be around. Undertale takes such a large risk narratively by having the main plot of the game take such a backseat, but I think it paid off wonderfully because the character writing is just that good. It's such an incredible aspect of the game, and it's why further, deeper discussion of these characters has persisted, even now. There's whole YouTube channels dedicated to talking about this game's characters, even beyond just theory crafting and connections to the ongoing Deltarune story. It is clear as day that Undertale made an incredible achievement with this iconic cast of characters. Oh yeah, I think I might have missed a character, but hopefully that shouldn't be a big deal. I think I finally made up my mind on what to do with Asgore here, so let's just... In an incredibly shocking moment, Flowey, from the very beginning of the game, returns and kills Asgore and takes the stored away human souls. In fact, if you carefully observed during your playthrough, you would have noticed that he was actually following you the entire time. There's dozens of rooms you can walk backwards in to find him there, following you, watching you, even speaking into one of Waterfall's echo flowers, taunting you. But now, he removes your agency, your choice. No matter what you do, Asgore will die here. Even if you believe he deserves mercy, Flowey takes that away from you, because in this world, as he says, it's kill or be killed. The final boss fight against Flowey is one of Undertale's most iconic set pieces. After causing the game to fake crash, Flowey emerges as this eldritch abomination, completely warping the art style of the game. No longer is it pixel art, it's high-resolution 3D images stitched together to create this unsettling, unnerving entity that serves as the game's final boss. Flowey toys with you, weaponizing save states and the power he has with the absorbed souls. This fight was such a landmark feature that I feel like it inspired a ton of other works to break out of their preconceived shells and do absolutely crazy things like this. Flowey is relentless and intentionally overwhelming, but even if you continuously die, you're always making progress very slowly. And as you start to free the various human souls in these little minigame segments, before eventually confronting Flowey with all of your strength. But even that's not enough, as he restores his own HP after faking you out, and seemingly is about to win and take your soul. He eventually is defeated by the combined force of all of the souls, bringing you to the final choice of the game. Do you kill Flowey, or do you let him live? Do you subscribe to his mentality of kill or be killed, or do you show mercy to him and allow him to escape, even after everything he's done? Undertale gets no illusions about attempting to tell you what the right answer here is. There isn't one. Other choices in the game would rob you of getting to know one of the game's characters, or make the area feel more desolate and empty because that character was gone. But here, this is the very end, and it's up to you to make that decision. Attempting to spare Flowey will have him repeatedly tell you that killing is the only way. But if you go through with it, you'll eventually confuse him to the point of bewilderment, and he runs away. Or you can choose to end his life. Either way, you walk forward and leave the underground and get an ending. The ending you receive depends on the choices you made. Sans will call you on the phone, and all the major characters will talk to you or be referenced if they're alive. The variety of endings in Undertale is staggering. At this particular juncture, there are technically 81 unique endings you can receive, but assuming you do not consider Sans' flavor text at the very beginning of the call to constitute as a major change, there's still roughly 15 major endings, with several of them having splits that are pretty major, putting the real amount to around 20-ish. That is one hell of a payoff to the game's morality system, and it makes these endings feel all pretty unique. What characters you killed, who you spared, who you got to know. Did you hang out with Papyrus and Undyne? Different ending. Did you kill a few monsters along the way? Different ending. Did you kill all of the major characters but not a single other monster? Dog ending. Did you leave Toriel alive and kill Undyne? Different ending. Will Metaton take over? What happens if Papyrus is the only one left? What happens if you kill almost everyone? Will Sans take over? The game accounts for every single one of these scenarios, and as a result, it leaves the morality system feeling incredibly important and impactful. Your ending is a result of your journey, and the journey isn't particularly long or tedious, so replaying for a different ending is baked into the core design of the game. I think something important to note here as well is that the endings you receive here are satisfying enough that if a player did not feel like replaying the game again, although not a terribly tall order, Undertale ending here is still a satisfying enough journey, though you'll be missing out on the further content hidden in the game's true ending. Still, the endings you receive here are good enough that they don't feel like they're just a pit stop on your journey, and rather feel like conclusions to your tale, depending on the choices you made. Something the game does do is that the vast majority of these endings, even with all the characters alive, have a somber vibe to them. While they don't usually feel unsatisfying, they do definitely urge you to want to get a better outcome for these characters. And the more of them that you hurt or killed, the more somber and outright depressing some of these get. The No King ending, obtained by killing all of the Monster King candidates and some additional regular encounters, is intentionally pretty much void of anything. Undertale does a good job in that it pushes you to be a better person in the game itself by organically showing you the consequences of killing instead of just telling you, "No, that's bad, don't do that," flat out. It lets you do it, see the consequences for yourself, and then make the decision to try again and see if you can do a little bit better. It's always your choice and your call, and this game does a great job at making that feel meaningful in this ending segment. Afterwards, though, if you spared Flowey, he instructs you that it may be possible to obtain a better ending for everyone by getting to know Alphys more and making sure you do not kill anyone. You might think to yourself that if you kill Flowey, you'll be able to spare Asgore, but this is where Flowey reveals his insidious little trick. In order to go back, you'd have to reload your save file, which results in Flowey being resurrected, ultimately making your previous choice feel kind of pointless. If you then attempt to spare Asgore, he confirms what I said earlier about him not believing he deserves a way out, and attempts to take his own life to give you his soul, before being intercepted by Flowey, and the same results play out as before. You're basically backed into a corner to try out this better ending that Flowey hints at, which leads you directly into the game's pacifist ending. In the pacifist route, all the loose ends from earlier are tied up. You can hang out with Alphys and help her finally admit her feelings to Undyne about being in love with her. Yuri always wins. But the pacifist route has an entire exclusive area, Alphys' true lab, where you learn what she had been hiding and been ashamed of the entire time. The area is a creepy, grungy place that almost feels analog horror in its presentation, littered with deformed, creepy monsters known as amalgamates. However, you find out that these creatures were the results of experiments Alphys was conducting on attempting to extract the core essence of the thing that makes human souls so powerful: determination. Throughout the entire game, the word determination pops up a lot as a recurring theme, seemingly an emotion that empowers you as a player. But in reality, it's an actual physical substance that exists in the world that causes things to come to life. Literally, determination. Absolutely top tier wordplay on that one. That was such an incredible reveal to learn about for the first time. These amalgamate monsters were previously comatose monsters that were on death's door before being brought back to life with determination. But monster bodies cannot handle determination in the same way that humans can, which caused them to melt together. Alphys feels incredible shame about these experiments and feels as though she has to hide them away, because how could she possibly explain all of this to anyone without them thinking she's crazy? But ultimately, she did save all of these monsters from their impending, inevitable deaths, despite the circumstances. And she was trying to do good. It's a complex situation, but one that you can help her move on from and face together. But maybe the most terrifying and game-redefining discoveries you can find down here are through this TV and the final monitors. On the TV, various VHS tapes give you some missing context on Azrael and the fallen human, with it being revealed here that the character you named at the beginning isn't the character you control. No, the original fallen human, the one Azrael was siblings with, that was the character you named at the beginning. This human character's name is canonically whatever you decided it to be, but through a little secret Easter egg on the naming screen, the fanbase refers to this human as Kara for the sake of discussion about them. Just note that if I mention Kara, I am referring to this character. Through the VHS tapes, you learn that Kara's illness was self-inflicted. They intentionally consumed toxic flowers called buttercups as part of a plan for Azrael to take their soul and cross the barrier, kill 6 other humans, and come back and free monster kind. Ultimately, Azrael is trepidatious about this plan and doesn't want to lose his sibling, but goes through with it anyway. This moment, although short, basically entirely recontextualizes the story you thought you knew, but one other bombshell is dropped on you right as you exit the true lab. Determination was injected into the flower in Asgore's garden, the one right in the middle, the one that all the piles of Azrael's dust fell on top of, and that little flower mysteriously disappeared shortly thereafter. Still, the game does notably not spell it out in plain text what this means, although I and many other players figured it out by now. You return to New Home and confront Asgore again, but all of your friends come to stop the fight and all promise to have a good life in the underground. Flowey, however, reveals that this was all part of his plan, as now he can absorb the souls of everyone in the underground all at once. There's a piece of lore you can read in Waterfall that reveals that if you took almost every monster soul in the underground, they'd equal the power of one human soul. And with this, Flowey is able to absorb the 6 human souls and all the monster souls, or at least almost all of them, to finally give himself the power of 7 souls, and reveals himself to have been Azrael the entire time. This incredible final boss fight against Azrael has you battle with him, barely surviving his onslaught of powerful moves, and he boasts about resetting the timeline and taking control of everything. Even if you fall in battle here, your soul will refuse to die and literally refuse itself back together to continue the fight. Eventually, Azrael shows the full extent of his power and transforms, but by targeting the souls of your friends inside Azrael, you eventually free them and cause Azrael to experience the emotions they feel for you. With souls inside him again, Azrael gains back the empathy that he had lost as a soulless flower, and in an incredibly emotional moment that made me, and just about everybody else, tear up, he eventually surrenders after being reminded of his friend through the love your friends felt for you. Undertale uses this touching moment to drop an incredible bombshell again. The character you have played as this entire time was never just a self-insert or a blank slate, or even had the name that you thought you gave them at the beginning. Flowey mistook you for Kara several times, but the game reveals here that the human you play as is actually named Frisk, and it's their own character, independent of anything else. This is certainly a huge expectation subversion right at the very end of the game, and stands out in my mind as a powerful moment. Undertale has subverted tropes throughout its entire runtime, so why not do it one final time? Asriel, as a character, is an incredibly compelling case. He basically had his whole life taken from him by a plan he never really wanted to do, and he lost everything. He lost his sibling and friend, his parents, his life, and everything, all because of this plan he didn't want to go along with. But he also blames himself because he chose not to attack the humans in the village, and the regret he felt over that continued to hang over him, and was the driving force behind him adopting the kill or be killed mindset. It's an incredibly tragic tale, but yet it feels immensely satisfying at the end, getting to see him do the right thing, and he chooses to use his power to shatter the barrier and returns Frisk back to the underground with everyone else. With everyone all together, you're free to head right over to the ending, or take one last stroll around the underground and talk to literally everybody again. This is in direct reference to the ending of Earthbound that allow you to do this exact same thing. And I really appreciate that Undertale does not require you to do this, as you can simply walk one room to the right and finish the game, or you can take the time to go back and see everything. Almost the entire game has brand new dialogue for this epilogue segment, and it is an incredibly underrated part of the game experience that allows you to interact with it as much as you please. It's really something special. Ultimately, once you're ready, you can head to the right and watch the sunset with your friends, and you get one final choice if Frisk goes to live with Toriel or sets off on their own. And on that note, Undertale comes to an incredibly heartfelt finish. Keep in mind that this is only the external layer of our onion, or lava cake. I guess we agreed it was a lava cake. Either way, all this stuff is just the package the game offers on the surface, and what's here is already phenomenal. The story is gripping, emotional, and has some of the best written and compelling characters in any fictional work that I've ever played. The gameplay is fun, creative, and never really gets boring. The visuals simultaneously produce moments that blow me away, while also being a fun tribute to the personality and charm of Earthbound and games like it. What's here is already an incredible experience, and it helps that it is underscored by what I consider to be Undertale's shining crown on top of the achievements it has made and continues to make: the soundtrack. Undertale's music is something I immediately fell in love with, and I do not say this lightly. It is my favorite video game soundtrack. The score is incredibly well composed, rich in fantastic throwbacks to classic game sound fonts and feels, while continuously being dotted by incredibly catchy and memorable melodies. The game uses the musical concept of leitmotifs to anchor together the entire soundtrack through distinct character themes that pop out throughout the entire score over and over again, in new and inventive ways each time. You would think eventually this trick would get old, but it's constantly used in such new and inventive ways, and it results in incredible musical moments throughout the entire game that create an air of familiarity and cohesion, while also giving the game great variety in setting and locales. Toby Fox is nothing short of a musical genius, and this soundtrack is his magnum opus. Undertale's music will continue to live in my mind for the rest of my life, whether I'm listening to it in the game itself, or working on something, or playing it on the piano. Hell, this soundtrack revitalized my interest in playing piano as a whole, which was waning during my teenage years. It is a soundtrack I hold very, very close to my heart and in my mind, even when discussion of this game inevitably fades to cult classic status or becomes more niche in general. This is the one thing that will continue to shine through, unfazed as time marches on. Again, I cannot overstate my absolute adoration for this game's soundtrack. The melodies have stuck with me for a decade at this point, and I do not see that changing anytime soon. As a video game, I think Undertale succeeds greatly. Even if none of the following content I'm about to speak at length about was in the game, I still think this game would be very well regarded. And frankly, to the general fanbase of this game, these aspects of Undertale are the most regarded parts already. So you already have a very, very great game just on the surface level, but Undertale has so much more to offer to the seasoned and dedicated player. It offers things only a video game can, in a way that utilizes the medium in inventive ways to deliver storytelling that couldn't really be possible anywhere else. Player choice is the name of the game, and Undertale understands that. I remember when I was a kid, I had this one book. It was called Milo and the Magical Stones, and the book had a split story where you could choose in the middle what would happen, and the book was actually physically split into 2 segments depending on which choice you made. Imagine trying to do that, but with the amount of choices Undertale grants you. It would require a book the size of a football field, or maybe even 2 football fields. And that's not the only aspect Undertale has that utilizes the medium in a unique way. Many games have stories that kind of just play out like movies. I love the Xenoblade Chronicles series, for example. They have fantastic stories that I enjoy greatly. But I could just go watch a Xenoblade Chronicles all cutscenes video, and it is the exact same experience as seeing the scenes in the game. Undertale doesn't really have that. So much is tied to player interaction. In the next layer of the Undertale unspecified food item, okay, never mind, let's go back to the onion. There we go, that's much easier, and less expensive to render. Now, let's take a look into what I like to call the meta-narrative of the game. How the world exists as a game, how the game deconstructs and commentates over video game mechanics, how the game utilizes the mere act of saving and loading your game as a storytelling device and an in-universe power. And of course, in this segment, we'll largely be talking about the game's most sinister route. The tagline for Undertale as a game is, quote, "the friendly RPG where nobody has to die." And we've seen that part of the game with the pacifist ending. But that tagline begs the question, what happens when they do? Alright, we've moved into the next layer. Undertale is a video game, and it uses that to the absolute fullest. Video games as a medium for storytelling present a level of interaction that other pieces of art can't quite have, and this game does wonders in taking full advantage of what it is in order to create something really special. But it goes further than that into the full-on meta-narrative and commentary, in a way I've seen few games ever really try to tackle at the depth that this game does. After a player finishes the pacifist ending, they may notice that the reset button changes to say true reset instead. I haven't mentioned resets much until now because I wanted to save it for here, so let's talk about it. Pretty much any video game since the dawn of battery backups on cartridges has a save file to track your progress, and a way to delete it. Undertale takes this inherently video gamey system and actually turns it into a core part of the world building. Saving and reloading is not just a thing you can do because it's a video game, and it needs convenience for the player, no. In this game, saving and loading is an actual defined power that can be utilized by whatever entity in the underground happens to have the most determination at that moment. It's why during the final boss fight with Flowey, when he absorbs the human souls, he can use save states. Undertale takes full advantage of this incredible setup in order to create some really interesting lore and attention to detail. At the core of this is the save reset button. When you reset, you begin back at Ruins, but the game keeps track of various things you did in the previous playthrough for a mixture of storytelling, convenience, and character development. No characters can explicitly remember when resets happen, but there are a few characters who experience deja vu or have a strange feeling about things from time to time, such as Toriel and Papyrus. The game understands that players will instinctively try different choices on different playthroughs and will have dialogue to account for this. For example, when Toriel calls you in the Ruins to ask if you prefer butterscotch or cinnamon, the second time around, she'll either be surprised that you answered differently than before, or remark that she had a feeling that you'd say that if you answered the same as before. Little details like that really lend a lot of credibility and depth to the system, but by far the most interesting thing about saving, loading, and resetting is how Flowey interacts with you about it. Unlike everyone else in the underground, who either don't remember a thing and are entirely clueless about it, or the few that know about the mechanic but are still unable to actually remember, two particular characters stand out, Flowey and Sans. Sans, well, I have more to say about him later, but importantly, he doesn't remember resets. Yes, he does not actually remember you are genocides. I know, disappointing. But he's able to read expressions so well that he's able to mess with you despite existing outside of the save and reload infrastructure. There's a whole side quest you can embark on where Sans pranks you by sending you to walk on his treadmill in a dark room, but you can only go there after learning his secret code word by proving to him that you have the power to save and reload. It's really funny, but it's also such a unique way for a character to interact with you that constantly pokes at the fourth wall in a fun way. But the other character who interacts with this world building, Flowey, is different. Unlike anyone else, he actively remembers your resets and what you did previously. The true reset at the end of the pacifist ending is the only real way to actually remove his memories and start from a blank slate. Flowey's interactions with you at the beginning of the game are some of the best usages of the resetting mechanic as a meta-narrative tool. You can intentionally troll him by restarting the game over and over again to continuously talk to him. You can dodge his friendliness pellets during the tutorial to mess with him. But by far the most interesting example, and probably the first big fourth wall break that players will encounter, is after Toriel. It's extremely common, if not a completely intended part of the initial sequence, for the player to kill Toriel on their first encounter with her. After all, repeatedly pressing spare to do nothing is not the most obvious thing in the world, and plenty of encounters become spareable when they reach low HP. Toriel, though, specifically has a mechanic where when she approaches low HP, you'll do a huge amount of increased damage, meaning players thinking that this is the way to spare her will undoubtedly kill her on accident. Flowey then mocks you for this, baiting you by saying there's no way to save her, which prompts many players to attempt to reset here in order to try again. And when they succeed in sparing Toriel, they're in for an incredible scare, as Flowey not only remembers that you killed her, but mocks you and ridicules you for playing with someone's life just for your own satisfaction. I will never forget running into this moment for the first time. It's such a unique thing that you never see coming, and it leaves one hell of an impression. It's such a standout moment, and I feel like a part of the core experience for many players. The game basically sets you up to kill Toriel the first time for this reason. It's absolutely genius. And yet, it never holds your hand through any of this. Reloading and trying again is your choice. It never forces you or makes you go back. It's a really masterful use of the medium in what is normally just a standard video game system to have such an impactful moment. Flowey's got a bit more at the end of the game as well. You can repeatedly defeat Asgore over and over again to continuously talk to him and get some fun dialogue. It's quite a lot of fun to clear the game just to see what he'll say. He even talks about his experiences with Papyrus and Sans. It gives you hints at various things you can do, and it all pushes you towards trying to get the pacifist ending so he can enact his master plan. It's such a cool way to utilize the unique setup of the game world. But perhaps the biggest expectation subversion as well as one of the most notable instances of Undertale transforming a video game mechanic into world building is EXP and LV. Right near the end of the game, when you encounter Sans in the Judgment Hall location, he'll drop one of this game's biggest bombshells. EXP and LV are not experience points and level like you'd expect, but rather execution points and level of violence. Numbers that quantify not an arbitrary gamey growth system, but rather how versed one is at hurting others. Undertale really plays with the question of what must RPG characters in the world think about the main protagonist's behavior? Running around and killing everything in sight for money and power is a staple of video games, but rarely do they ask the moral question, because at the end of the day, it's just a video game. But Undertale frames this curiosity in a really understandable way. The citizens of the Underground absolutely would be terrified and scared of someone who just goes around deciding to kill people left and right. It makes complete sense from a narrative standpoint. These are people's friends and family. Their lives aren't just to be taken. And as such, rather than this increasing number that makes one feel better about themselves, instead, the concept of a level system is turned into this branding on your very soul that shows everyone that you're experienced in the art of taking lives. The game very smartly encourages you to be a good person, to not kill, by intentionally making the bulk of the game's quirky and zany humor and occurrences be tied to the characters. The game effortlessly makes you feel bad about killing these people because you're robbing yourself of potential enjoyment. And the characters are so strongly characterized that I know a lot of players who just never want to hurt them. Toby Fox understood the strength of his character writing and not only hinged the game's story progression on it, but used it as the basis of a morality system that does not explicitly tell you you're a piece of shit for doing this, but makes you feel that way organically by seeing the consequences of killing and branding you with this ever-increasing number. I think the only time the game actively starts having characters call you a horrible person is when you've accumulated quite a few kills, and on major characters at that, and at that point, you're well aware of the scenario and the game layout, and are probably just doing it intentionally, or even just to see what they'll say. But there's one other core RPG mechanic that Toby Fox decided to deconstruct in this way as well. If killing monsters and taking lives like any other video game makes you a bad person in this world, then you must ask yourself, what about grinding encounters to become stronger? Grinding was a core component of a lot of older RPGs that Undertale draws inspiration from, where you just walk back and forth, killing whatever you ran into because you weren't strong enough to defeat the next threat, or needed money to buy things. It was incredibly routine and part of the experience, especially back in the 90s before this magical thing called player convenience was a more normalized thing in the industry. In this universe, though, that already has these stringent moral qualms tied to taking the lives of monsters, encounter grinding would be this heinous act. And with the structure of the game, you never need to grind for anything. Money is plentiful and given to you in buckets for sparing monsters, and the game has built-in damage scaling so that Love 1 is never not enough to take on even powerful monsters like Asgore. So doing so, at this point, would just be a curiosity. And the game expects and understands that, and never once really lets on about what would happen if you just continuously killed not only everything you came across, but just kept going and going. And when you do this, you start to notice something. Monsters show up less frequently, with the space between encounters getting longer and longer. The game itself is actively encouraging you to not do this. There's no need to do this. But yet, you carry on because you, the curious player, want to see what happens. And then, eventually, you get into another battle, but nobody came. This had to have been one of the most stomach-dropping moments I have ever experienced in a video game. It almost felt creepypasta-like in nature. This secret that you were never supposed to discover, that you had to go incredibly out of your way to do, that you had to set aside all of your morality to attempt, and the music completely vanishes and drops to this incredibly eerie drone. All of the colorful NPCs that dotted every area, all gone. The flavor text has all of the joy and whimsy sucked out of it. Any quirkiness replaced with brief examinations and nothing more. Every save point has the usual iconic lines replaced with just one word: determination. You've just stumbled into Undertale's genocide route, the ultimate commentary on the behavior of video game players, the ultimate deconstruction of RPGs, and one of the most unsettling video game experiences out there. Many people who talk about Undertale in the current year might not even remember that this route's existence isn't obvious and is intentionally kind of obscured. Nothing ever tells you about it, only ever hints at it, and it's really up to you if you want to take Flowey's advice and extrapolate that to the extreme. But it also exists to satiate a natural curiosity. LV is a number that continuously goes up, so there has to be a maximum. The pacifist ending exists by saving everyone and helping everyone, so there must be an opposite. The game ingeniously pushes you towards the discovery of this route on your own and gives you, the player, the agency to make the attempt on your own. You never have to do it. This is an important thing to keep in mind moving forward. You can stop at any time. As you progress with this route, you'll find all of the hijinks and antics are replaced with vain attempts at the characters to try to have fun. Papyrus in particular has all of his puzzles completely fall flat as you just refuse to interact with them at all. The music becomes warped and slowed down, and monsters at this point barely stand a chance against your increased stats, with almost all of them dying in just 1 or 2 hits now. You have no real moral reason to continue this. Asgore would be a cakewalk at this power level, but yet the game smartly leaves a new breadcrumb for you to follow by adding an area kill count to save points starting now. This signifies without words to the player that there is an objective to clear at the end of all of this. The question is, do you have the stomach to kill all of your favorite characters? Papyrus is an incredibly beloved character, and the game knows that, by having him not even attempt to fight you. Instead, he offers himself up defenseless, boldly stating that he knows that you'll make the right choice and choose mercy. I know so many people who could not get past this. Not because it was difficult or frustrating or cheap. Not because they physically couldn't do it, but because they felt so bad about killing Papyrus, their friend, who was offering themselves up with no maliciousness. How many video games do you know where someone quits an objective because it made them feel bad? That is such an uncommon thing to happen, and I think it's an enormous accolade that Undertale should adorn on itself with pride. It got people to care about a video game character so much to the point where many people would stop here and abandon this route. You may remember how when LV and EXP were being explained, it was said the more the number increases, the easier it is to distance yourself. I think this is the single biggest moment in the game that puts that to the test. because once you kill Papyrus, it's unlikely that you'll stop the route willingly from here on. This is the point of no return that the game was implying through its definition of LV, but how many games out there have a morality point of no return? It's such a unique thing that Undertale does, and it really sets this game apart in the writing department. What was present before was already incredibly strong video game writing, but this actively takes the fact that you are the player of a video game with this ungodly power to transcend time and existence itself, and manages to still wreck your emotions. What a game. This whole entire segment is honestly excellent. Once you complete the Snowdin area kill count, Snowdin Town goes dead silent. What was once a previously bustling town, even if you took a few lives in your other playthroughs, is now completely silent and empty. The previously quaint shop has all of the wares that you can steal for free, and just one note that you can read behind the counter. Please don't hurt my family. This moment is pivotal in really settling in that you are the scum of the earth. These people are absolutely horrified of you, sheltering away, begging you not to hurt them or their loved ones. You've gone far enough in this route that the writing fully understands that you're doing this on purpose and directly labels you as a villain, a freak, a sicko. As you clear out the Snowdin kill count, with the encounter space becoming longer and longer, you're not really fulfilling a curiosity anymore. Rather, Undertale uses this continuing grinding as more of a punishment to the player to really set in that they should not be doing this. Beforehand, the increasing space between encounters was being used as a curiosity and breadcrumbs to lead you to suspect that you were making progress. But now, it's being used to reinforce that you'll see this through to the end, even if it makes the game world empty and dark. Now, this point is contentious when talking about deeper discussion of this game. There's a lot of people out there who believe this aspect of the game is going too far into punishing a player for trying to see everything that the game had to offer. Because even though this is a commentary on that exact thing, it is still a video game that we paid for, that we are playing for enjoyment. I don't fully agree with this. I instead appreciate this incredibly unique writing for what it is, and I think it's such a unique way to engage with a video game. Additionally, I find that this part of the game does a really good job at setting a unique tone and making you feel like a full-on evil villain as you track down weak monsters and kill them for sport. The payoff of the warped music in the desolate Snowdin town, the absolutely heartbreaking Papyrus death scene where he begs you to be a better person with his dying breath, says he knows you can do it. It's all such a magnificent thing in my eyes. With that being said, however, I think that this portion of the genocide route is where Undertale shows that even it is not a perfect game. Nothing is. I think a few aspects cause this segment to slip just a little bit. I've tried to talk about how I feel about this particular segment before, but it's usually marred by people misinterpreting me, or the point being difficult to convey in the limited time or limited character counts of social media. But if you're this far into this video already, I am going to assume you're going to hear me out in good faith. Two things. One, Undertale's codebase has been famously poked fun at for the simplicity and sometimes extremely bizarre ways the game is programmed. However, despite all the quirks, they either add to the experience or never negatively impact a casual playthrough. This is really important to me. It does not matter for 99% of Undertale players that I could use the punch card to turn the game into mushy paste and cause it to collapse like a demolished building. The game always works casually, and rarely will people run into any kind of issues. In fact, I find that this game's programming is so rudimentary to be an incredibly motivating thing. One of the most iconic and influential games of the decade is nestled in if statements, and as someone who wants to make their own game one day, that is motivating in a way very few things are. However, this moment is the one time that the imperfections of Undertale's code rear their ugly heads. This entire Geno Snowdin segment has some bugs, some of which have been fixed, but one of which is still in the present day release of the game, and it causes the music to return to normal after various cutscenes. This totally breaks the immersion and removes that unsettling factor, but more importantly, it gives bad feedback. Several of these instances are after cutscenes with Papyrus and Sans, potentially making you think you did something wrong or you made the wrong choice, when you didn't. This was added onto by a bug with the save point dialogue that caused a line of flavor text that indicated that you had to kill the Snowdrake monster to always override your kill count and make progression a little unclear. That one got fixed, but the music thing did not. I think this is an actual genuine issue with the game, as it gives the player direct, incorrect feedback in a way that feels external and not accounted for by the game. It wasn't intended to be designed this way, and it definitely always throws me off, even though I know it's coming. Secondly, Jerry. Jerry is a comic relief encounter that extends the length of other monsters' attacks. The entire thing with Jerry is that they're hated by everyone, and you can ditch them manually with other monsters. And their flavor text and dialogue is all just about being stereotypically annoying. They don't even show up in the pacifist credits with all the other monsters, because that's the entire joke. This works perfectly fine in any other playthrough, but in Geno, Jerry is present in every single formation in the back half of the area, and he takes forever to kill. It's kind of funny seeing its super high defense and the absurdity of how long it takes to kill them the first time, but it quickly crosses over into being flat out annoying and causes this segment to doubly drag on longer than it probably needed to. The illusion of me being this evil villain going around killing innocent monsters kind of breaks a bit when this one repeatedly shows up and is just obnoxious. I don't feel anything about killing Jerry, and being in every single formation here drags the pace to a crawl. Remember, I don't feel bad about killing Jerry, I just feel ambivalent. Remember earlier how I said genocide was contentious? My only qualm with the pace lies here in Snowdin, basically almost exclusively because of this enemy. And I know this isn't a qualm I have with the rest of the game, because I find it to only be an issue here. Additionally, Snowdin gets a bit choicy with what rooms you can run into monsters at all. Undertale has a hidden mechanic where monsters take longer to show up on repeated encounters in the same room, something that makes you not get bombarded while exploring a room thoroughly. In Genocide, this can go directly against the player if they decide to just stay in the exact same spot the entire time, but this is a mechanic that can at least be discerned or at least worked around. Snowdin gets a bit weird, as only the final room is the one that you'll probably be doing most of your encounter grinding in, not really giving you a chance to move around because most of the rooms and all of the rooms surrounding it don't produce encounters. The encounter grinding is supposed to be mundane as a deconstruction of RPG mechanics and the way we enjoy video games as a whole, but outside of this one instance, Undertale walks an incredibly tight line right at the edge of monotony, but never actually falls into the pit. The encounters take just long enough to let you feel that growing numbness, but not quite long enough for me to ever completely clock out. This being the one exception, and a moment I think could have been done better. This is basically the only notable issue I have with Undertale at all, and thankfully, this is still a huge nitpick. I still greatly enjoy basically the entire Snowdin segment, and I adore this route as a whole, both narratively and mechanically. And I think the entire masterclass of a segment with the empty Snowdin town and the papyrus death scene far, far outweighs anything negative I had to say. I just wanted to note one of the only flaws I see in this game, as every single thing out here does have a flaw, and I find noting them can raise understanding of how to avoid that potential pitfall in a follow-up. And I think judging by how the weird route in Deltarune is handled, similar lessons may have been gleaned by Toby Fox himself, but I can't be sure of that. Still, I hope I was finally able to explain this in a way that was cohesive, as the last few times I've attempted to explain how I feel about this, I've had some people insisting that I don't understand the game at all, or that I was just mad because I'm a speedrunner and I wanted to go fast. Notice how I haven't even mentioned that fact until now, though? Don't worry, it'll come up again at the next layer. The death of Papyrus marks a shift. There's basically no going back now, and at this point, the little exclamation point above Frisk's head changes to be a smiling face. You're no longer in danger or alarmed by running into a monster. You're excited, happy, because you get to take another life. Without a single word, yet again, Undertale characterizes you in a new light by just this little switch up alone. Waterfall has its music warped incredibly slowly, turning the previously majestic and mysterious track into an ominous, empty drone. There's barely any NPCs to talk to, and the previously comic relief or storytelling echo flowers are completely silent. Monster Kid, previously a happy companion, is nothing more than a progression tool now, helping you get further into the area. Even the Mad Dummy, a really off-the-walls comedy fight, is replaced with a quick-kill fight against the Glad Dummy, being effortlessly dispatched instead. But by far the most striking moment in Waterfall comes with Gerson, the shopkeeper, demonstrating the wisdom he's gotten over the years. After all, he's old! He actively takes advantage of the rules of the game world. He's fully aware that since he runs a shop, there is no way that you can battle him, and that he cannot be harmed here. And as such, he takes this opportunity to taunt you, belittle you, and generally just shit talk you. This is one of my favorite details in this game. He takes full advantage of the fact that this is a video game shop and that he's essentially immortal here. And hell, if him being dead in Deltarune is an indication, being here genuinely might actually make him immortal. And so he gains a completely new dynamic where he can just talk shit with absolutely no fear of you. And I think this is complete genius. Everyone else up to this point has been absolutely terrified of you, so now you get a rare moment to actually get some interaction. Just another instance of Undertale utilizing the meta-narrative to the fullest and really getting everything out of the world being a video game world. Once you reach the end of Waterfall and clear it fully of any monsters, you'll notice something peculiar, a new save point at the end of this room. If you step forward, you'll turn on Monster Kid, something no other route lets you do, with the flavor text suddenly changing to first person, with the declaration that Monster Kid is simply in my way. I wanted to wait for this moment to talk about this, but as soon as you get the very first but nobody came instance in Ruins, there's a couple of instances where the flavor text and narration becomes first person, something the game otherwise basically never does outside of a joke here and there. Looking in the mirror in Toriel's house shows you that it's not you, but instead, it's me, the player's original selected name. The genocide route causes Kara, a previously off-screen entity, to start invading the flavor text and gain direct influence. It's a really interesting thing to be placed here in this route, and it's sort of an unspoken but implied explanation. At the end of the pacifist route, you can find out that Kara's body was actually taken by Toriel and buried under the flowers that you land on at the very beginning of the game. As such, their influence is kind of always with you, but doing this route and gaining determination seems to awaken them from their eternal slumber and causes this really interesting dynamic where you start to take on their qualities. It's intentionally extremely open-ended, and there's a lot of super deep conversations between fans of this game regarding this character. But for this review, I'll stick mostly with what's in the game itself. Still, it's a very interesting dynamic and really plays around with how much you're breaking the game world by doing what you're doing. Now, the very narration is starting to transform. Someone who is long dead is being brought back, and everything feels empty and broken. But also serves as an incredibly interesting way to gather even more insight into a character who's otherwise only really existent in the background and as part of the world building. Monster Kid is your last chance to turn back. But at this point, the flavor text is even encouraging you to move forward. With lines like, "looks like free XP," when you check them, it's almost as if you've trained the game to expect your behavior at this point, that this is normal now. And as such, you take that swing at Monster Kid, but only for them to be intercepted at the last moment by Undyne, who takes mortal damage. But in this moment, she gives you a speech. She clings on to her own determination with the weight of the world and everyone's hopes and dreams beating as one, and transforms into Undyne the Undying, the most powerful monster in the underground. This fight is cinema. Everything about it. It's tough as nails with difficult to navigate patterns. It's climactic, as this is really Monsterkind's final hope against you. It feels powerful as the game sneakily multiplies your damage in order to give you those huge RPG damage numbers you've been salivating over ever since you started gaining love. And of course, it's scored by an absolutely elite piece of music in battle against the true hero, a powerful track filled with energy. But this is where you realize this track isn't for you, it's for her. Because Undertale flips the roles on you here. You're the villain, and she's the hero. You're still the protagonist of this game. But in any other story, you're the evil villain this hero has to stop. This is such a fun little reversal of roles, and it really gives this fight a lot of identity. This is the big, stereotypical clash on the bridge, with the wind howling, Undyne assuming a transformation sequence right out of Dragon Ball Z, and using this ascended form of hers to fight you. And now, after testing your morality and managing to create an emotional skill check, which I had no idea was even possible, for whether or not you could kill your friends like Papyrus to get here, Undertale rips off the bandage and really ups the challenge factor. It's almost as if the game itself is directly trying to get you to stop what you were doing. Before, it was indirect by making you feel bad and filling you with dread and malevolence as you slaughtered the slowly reducing pool of monsters. but now it's direct, and this fight is quite a haymaker. But yet, Undertale, even at its most difficult, stays fair. It would have been incredibly easy for the game to veer off course into difficulty that's just pure bullshit. But every single attack here is learnable, predictable, and has patterns to memorize and adapt to. You'll continuously make progress through your attempts if you just keep at it, really just showcasing how impactful this save and load ability you have is, and that you'll persist through anything at this point to see this through, even through a difficult fight. It would have been easy for the fight to have just been completely unfair, poorly designed attacks, and create an impassable difficulty wall that caused players to quit out of frustration. But Undertale masterfully avoids that by crafting this fight in a way that you constantly feel like you're making progress, even when you die over and over again. In fact, this is one of the best designed fights in the entire game, and is a highlight of the entire journey to me. And I think it being designed this way is genius because it gives credence to the fact that you can continue, and that you are always making progress. You can use your meta power to learn and adapt, and the fight is designed how it is because if you can do it, then you have to be able to do it, right? If the fight was just completely impossible, then this aspect would be lost. But it's designed absolutely perfectly for this moment and fits right into the game-bending route. And defeating her is a bittersweet satisfaction. You still feel sad that you've killed your previous friend, but at this point, you're more satisfied that you defeated such a difficult challenge. And that is where Undertale wins a victory over you. It just made you happy with what you were doing. It proved itself right. You're the villain because you just took pleasure in what you did. What a moment. Hotland is similarly empty and void of anything to do besides moving forward to the core, where monster encounter rates are jacked up as they try to stop you from reaching the end. You do get a really surprisingly humorous interaction with Burger Pants, the hotel shop NPC, who just could not give less of a shit about being evil, because nothing could be worse than his capitalistic boss. Seriously, the "I can't go to hell, I'm all out of vacation days" line when you threaten him is something I say to myself regularly quite often now. It's like a top 5 line for me in this entire game. Gerson knew that you couldn't hurt him because of his old man wisdom and experience, but Burger Pants is just completely apathetic to the situation, and yet that gives him this unexpected aura around him that you never expect. A really fantastic subversion of expectations, especially given that the Snowden shop owner, QC, was completely horrified of you. Now, at this point, if you choose to forego the genocide route and move forward, you'll get an incredibly empty neutral ending. But the only ending in which Alphys becomes the leader of the underground, and shows that even without you, she does have the inner strength to face her demons when push comes to shove, even if she didn't believe it before. It's a very interesting footnote ending, but one that I think a lot of players encountered by accidentally messing up the route at the very end, something you may do if you misinterpret the save points, one left being about Metaton and not the final random encounter. The core area jacks up the monster encounter rate, and the usual creepy vibe is replaced by something interesting. The core music is still slowed down, but rather than feeling creepy, it almost feels like workout music instead. The game at this point knows that you're in this fully and is pushing you towards the ending you so desperately want to see, and this segment gives you a chance to flex this unmatched power against regular enemies with the most powerful weapons in the game. Usually, the empty gun is really expensive and not something you want to buy, but since you can get it for free, you finally get to wail around with the most powerful weapon in the game, dispatching monsters with 4 powerful strikes and watching the damage numbers go wild as you take out everything in one hit. Oh yeah, and the gun's pretty cool too, I guess. I'm more of a burnt pan enjoyer myself. This might be an analytical review, but hey, some things never change, okay? Eventually, you'll clear out the core of all of the enemies, and you'll come face to face with Metaton, who reveals his most powerful form, Metaton Neo. But in a total expectation subversion, Neo is famous for its low defense and will get overkilled in just one hit, no matter how weak. At this point, no statistical challenge can stand in your way, and you come into this fight expecting something similar to Undyne the Undying, even with the music track Power of Neo using the same introductory leitmotif to draw the comparison. But Metaton is dispatched almost instantly and barely even gets a one-liner off before exploding. If you do the Alphys neutral ending, he gets some time to lecture you about you failing to be truly evil, But here, it's just one line, and that's it. The most glamorous, flashy star of the underground subverted and turned into a joke. Again, you've completely broken the game and caused it to completely break down through your actions. And more than that, I'm going off script here to say this because this was something I felt when I played the game again, but Mettaton's fight notably does not oversee Undyne's. It doesn't supersede it. That was a problem I was worried about originally, and why I think that Mettaton Neo's fight being this way is really, really genius. Because if it was another big, hard, statistical fight, it would probably overshadow Undyne a bit. But no statistical challenge is going to hurt you anymore. The game has tried that with Undyne the Undying, and it failed. There is nothing that can stand in your way anymore. It would have to be something that can break the game itself. And then you reach New Home. I'm going to tackle this slightly out of order because I want to talk about the first thing in far more depth in the next segment. So for now, you talk to Flowey about the socioeconomic state of the world and the geopolitics of the underground, and then after that, you come face to face with Sans in the Judgment Hall. Sans judges you here on every single neutral ending, but this time, well, you already know where this is going. If you know anything about Undertale, it's probably this moment. The standoff with Sans is one of the most iconic moments in video games in general. And holy moly, it is an absolute masterclass of usage of Undertale's meta-narrative to craft the ultimate subversion of expectations. Undyne's battle was the peak of Undertale's RPG system. But what follows here is where Undertale truly creates an iconic, unique, and original masterpiece of a battle. Because it's not like any other fight in the game. And like he said, because of what you've done, well, you're gonna have a bad time. The fight with Sans is the best fight in the game. It uses everything in the kitchen sink, but what makes it so special is that Sans interacts with you in a way that sidesteps the game mechanics entirely and takes full advantage of your expectations. He takes the first move, unlike anyone else, and jump scares you with his most powerful attack right off the bat. Undertale understands that doing something like this only really works once, and after that, he doesn't do something like that again. So rather than being annoying, it stands out as an incredibly memorable moment. Sans dodges all of your attacks. You can't hit him. You can't use all of your strength. He literally only has one attack, one defense, and 1 HP. Statistically, he should be about as relevant as a dust particle, but he constantly avoids you, forbidding you from using the powerful 99 attack real knife that you picked up in New Home. He doesn't attack you with raw strength. Instead, he uses a unique damage method called Karma that deals damage per frame, completely sidestepping your defense. He doesn't even use traditional bullet patterns, instead taking a note from his brother's very special attack by using the Blue Soul mode to change it into more of a platformer boss instead. It is a complete subversion of everything the game does, but the game is fully aware of that, and Sans is fully aware of it as well, and he taunts you intentionally with that in mind. His goal is to try to frustrate the player with his fight to get you to quit. As like I said earlier, he's aware of the existence of the resets and can use your expression to change his behavior and read you. He even jump scares you, cuts off his own introduction text in order to catch you off guard on repeat attempts just to troll you. He tracks your deaths and mocks you for each one. He even seemingly lets you spare him, only to kill you and exclaim the iconic "Get Dunked On" line. And even the music subverts expectations. I mentioned how the entire soundtrack is webbed together by the use of shared leitmotifs. But Megalovania, the absolutely outstanding masterpiece of a battle track that accompanies this fight, notably shares no motifs with anything outside of a fringe split-second connection with the credits theme that some people believe exists. In fact, Megalovania isn't even from Undertale, as it was composed for Toby Fox's Earthbound Halloween hack in 2008 and was later reused for his discography on Homestuck, before eventually being used one more time for Undertale. Every single thing in this fight is a masterful usage of Undertale's meta-narrative and subversion of every expectation to create a one-of-a-kind, legendary boss fight. And above all else, while incredibly difficult, the fight is just so damn fun to play. The patterns are endlessly satisfying to memorize and learn, and getting good at this fight feels so incredibly rewarding just on the merit of being an incredibly well-designed, tough as nails, seemingly unfair fight that's secretly very fair under the hood, but in ways that almost consistently catch you off guard on your first sight of them. The most iconic fight in the game by a wide margin, and it earns every single accolade. Undertale is a masterpiece, but the Sans fight is the defining gameplay moment in my opinion. Everything that makes Undertale great, the character writing, the meta-narrative, the gameplay, the music, it all radiates in this one moment. The Sans fight is nothing short of absolute cinema. Eventually, after hours and dozens of attempts, you'll eventually get the better of Sans, who has one last trick up his sleeve. He knows that if the turn passes back to you, you'll win. So in an absolutely stunning moment, he decrees that it simply won't ever stop being his turn, and you'll just stand there forever until you give up. He completely analyzes the player at this point, correctly assessing that you don't care about good or evil, and you're doing this because you're curious. And just like I said earlier, just because you can do something means you have to. It's an absolutely outstanding way to frame the completionist mindset of video game players, really pushing how far you'll go to see it all. But Sans eventually falls asleep, and you continue breaking the game by literally moving the battle box over to the fight button to beat him. I'm sure you get the point by now, but this is such a comical exaggeration of the concept of constantly fighting against the very limitations of the video game that it stands out as a very notable example of it. You ambush Sans, but you catch him off guard by attacking twice. But the second attack wasn't done by you directly. It happens automatically, giving a very concerning glimpse of what's to come. You reach Asgore and automatically dispatch him without any input. Flowey shows up and begs for his life in a rare moment of him being terrified and scared, feeling genuine fear for the first time in God knows how long. And again, you automatically start rapidly attacking him without any input. For the first time, your control over the game has been wrested away from you. And although the outcome you reach here is probably what you wanted to see, it's still a stunning moment. You have always had the choice in your control in this game, and suddenly, it's been taken from you. The game is no longer under your control. Instead, it's under their control. The face-to-face meeting with Kara is an incredibly iconic and terrifying moment. For the first time, you're now the helpless one, facing down someone you know nothing about, as they explain how your guidance and your determination put them on this course along with you. You lose the ability to even close the game. You'd have to actually close it through Windows at this point. Your control and your escape key has been taken away from you. Eventually, Kara gives you an ultimatum. Erase the world with them, or the option to resist and not erase. But opting to try to abandon this route right at the very end has them mock you and declare, "Since when were you the one in control?" And in one of the most sudden and terrifying And in this moment, when Kara strikes down the very game itself, the window rocks back and forth like the monsters you've struck your entire playthrough, with the game itself suffering maximum damage, the screen filled with nothing but nines, the highest number. The game takes away the control you've relished in for its entire runtime, the one thing you were always so sure of, and literally causes the game itself to die. Rebooting Undertale at this point brings you to an empty black void. It's over. You killed everything. You broke everything. And you have transcended the boundaries of the fourth wall and have dispatched even the game itself. I will never forget how I felt the first time I saw this. Never before had I seen a game do this and just straight up forbid me from playing it again. It's an incredibly haunting moment. Just you and the wind and the void. and nothing more. But this is a game you paid money for, so there is a workaround. If you wait on this screen for 10 minutes, eventually, Kara speaks to you again and allows you to return the world back after you admit that you believe yourself to be above consequences. In exchange, you give them custody of your soul. Then, the game is brought back in a completely true resetted state. The only impact selling your soul has is on repeat playthroughs of either the pacifist or genocide endings specifically. In genocide, Kara criticizes you for doing the route again, insisting you use your time in more productive ways. But in pacifist, right at the very end, they'll gain full possession of Frisk through the corrupted soul, and the game ends on a cut to black after a maniacal laugh. If you instead opt to go without Toriel, the usual postcard with your friends has them all X'd out and Frisk replaced with Kara, implying that they go on to end every single one of them with the power that you gave them. This consequence is permanent. There is no in-game way to undo this state. Your consequences truly will follow you around for the rest of time. Except not really. The file that controls your soul being sold is not difficult to find and can be deleted manually from the game directory. I'd like to propose that I think the ability to do this can be interpreted as extended commentary on the nature of video games, that ultimately you do exist as this higher being and can manipulate everything, even the very fabric and building blocks of the game itself. Undertale calls itself a game in the game multiple times and is self-aware that it is a video game. As such, I like to interpret this moment as something Toby Fox anticipated and expected. Because no matter what Undertale itself tries to do, you always have a way out with your power. Whether that be removing the file, deleting and reinstalling the game on consoles, or what have you. Hell, if you edit your save data to have a character name longer than 6 characters, there's even special flavor text in the menu mocking you with the line, "Easy to change, huh?" This implies that the game itself expects some degree of file editing and knowledge of the very fabric of the game from the omniscient player. And that's why I like to think this consequence avoidance through knowledge of the game's file structure is actually completely intentional design. But even if it isn't, most people won't explore enough to find this, and as such, it's an iconic moment. Congratulations, you completed Undertale. Your permanent mark of completion is your corrupted soul. That's the trophy. That's the reward. It's a full circle deconstruction of completion in video games in such an interesting, unique, and genuinely thought-provoking way. Well done, Toby. And with that, we've reached the ending of this layer of the onion. You may notice I skipped over one particular thing on the genocide route, Flowey. The next segment is going to focus on him mostly, because this is the ultimate meta-narrative pull that Undertale has up its never-ending sleeve. Do you know what a foil is? Not the thing you wrap your food in. Not that thing you remembered in high school, the factor equations and algebra. No, I mean the literary type of foil. A foil is a character that, through their comparison and contrasting with the protagonist of a literary work, highlights a specific theme or quality or trait. And through Flowey and the medium of this being a video game, Undertale creates the ultimate foil to us, the person playing the game. Join me as we dive into the core of this onion, and I get to tell you about the single best and most defining moment to me in the entire game. I said Sans' fight was the most defining gameplay moment, but this is something else. Let's talk about Flowey's chat with the player in New Home in the genocide route, how Undertale crafts a one-of-a-kind foil to the player, and how Toby Fox crafted one of the most uniquely relatable antagonists and characters in fiction. In the context of a video game world, what would the inhabitants of it feel about a player character? I asked this question earlier when talking about the deconstruction of the fourth wall through the genocide route, but Toby Fox decided to go one step further to answer that question and created Flowey. Flowey, while already a very excellent villain just from the Layer 1 perspective, gains so much more through a few interactions you can have with him, both upon completing the same neutral playthrough repeatedly, and more importantly, his final monologue during the New Home section of Genocide. I largely skipped over it the first time because I wanted to talk about it more in depth here, But the crawl through New Home in this route is one of the most incredibly unsettling moments in the game, while also being extremely melancholic. The entire thing is underscored by a slowed down version of the music track Small Shock, which, while only being 2 repeating notes, does an incredible job setting the tone for the whole area. This area also does a lot to flesh out Kara in the limited amount of interactions we have with them, showcasing a lot of character through the changed narration in the area, even being colored red to imply a direct thought from them as opposed to the indirect influence before. I guess now is a pretty good time to dive more in depth into that aspect as well, as I summarized it before pretty briefly. There's a lot of deeper discussion in the fanbase about Kara's relationship with the game's narration, and I figure I would throw in my own personal interpretation as well. We learned from Flowey that Kara's body was taken by Toriel as she left Asgore, and presumably buried underneath the original golden flowers where the journey begins. As such, when Frisk arrives in the underground, Kara's essence seemingly attaches itself to Frisk and accompanies them throughout the entire adventure. I think personally that this is the case on every route. There's several instances of flavor text in the neutral and pacifist routes that showcase some level of influence from them over certain things. For example, when in New Home in these routes, when examining their room and specifically their bed, their own bed has a large description talking about how comfortable it is, while also subtly pointing at their death, which presumably happened here, literally on their deathbed. The other bed, which belonged to Azrael, doesn't garner nearly the same amount of depth from this interaction. This kind of stuff is all over the place if you look hard enough, and in my opinion, shows an indirect influence Kara has over the entire game, as their essence is influencing various things in the narration. But in Genocide, as your determination fully reawakens them, this becomes explicitly direct, even sometimes using red text to clearly showcase this. Additionally, a lot of the text, particularly here in New Home, becomes written in first person, something Undertale basically never does outside of a few jokes. The game takes this moment to flesh Kara out just a little bit and do some world building, like confirming that they made the pink sweater in Asgore's dresser, or showing that they expect chocolate to be in the fridge and appear disappointed by the lack of it. Small details like this didn't really need to exist, but yet, Toby Fox went the extra mile to make sure that even a character like Kara, who exists indirectly for a vast majority of the runtime, still gets moments of development. It gives a really powerful sense of belonging and really deepens the world a lot, and leads to a lot of deeper theorizing and speculation from the community, and I think that's really awesome. Undertale is multifaceted. It's never just doing one thing at a time, and constantly has multiple interesting details that it's juggling. The game has an incredible attention to detail, and this is just another example of that. Since we're talking about community speculation anyway, I'm going to put off Flowey for a moment to take a tangent within a tangent to talk about auxiliary lore stuff. Specifically, the world building done for characters that do not interact with the story directly and serve as mysteries for the community. And with the benefit of hindsight, a setup for the game's connection to Deltarune, the self-proclaimed parallel story. Undertale has a secret value assigned to every save file called the fun value, and it is between 1 and 100. If the number hits a certain range, certain events may play. Some of these can be comedy moments like Sans or Alfie's calling you in Snowden as a joke, but a lot of them focus on these gray NPCs known internally as goners. They make a reference to a character that has no place in the main story itself, but exists to flesh out the world further. The previous royal scientist, Dr. W.D. Gaster. What Gaster even is largely a mystery, but he's all over these hidden fun value events. Almost intentionally, like a scavenger hunt. He's even got stats in the battle data section of the game, bringing up this association with the number 6, which has satanic connotations in biblical mythology. Fun value 66 in particular adds this completely random extra hallway to Waterfall, but has a further rare chance to produce this door that takes you to see this creepy character, who is largely believed to be Gaster himself by the community, or at least a piece of him. Who Gaster is, what he's done, his relationships with other people, it's not important at all to the main story of Undertale, but yet, he's here, just to have a fun thing to flesh out the world further. He provides this really cool, mysterious intrigue for dedicated fans to speculate about, and I think this adds a lot of fun overall to the game, no pun intended there. These little breadcrumbs hinting at something deeper really fleshes out the mysteriousness of this world, that even though you are this all-powerful player figure, you can't quite know every mystery. There's a goner NPC version of Monster Kid that, while they don't mention Gaster like the others, talks about how it feels to live in a world where you never existed, implying that nobody in this universe even remembers or knows who Gaster is anymore. It makes him feel totally otherworldly in presentation, only having these little pieces of him, like his name, his potential design, his previous role, and even a theme song. And I feel like this is extremely deliberate, as he was shattered across time and space. His very existence is now carried on through, well, essentially various Easter eggs. They turned Easter eggs, an inherently video gamey thing, into a character, which is just another instance of Undertale turning video gamey things into fleshed out components in the story. It's such a cool thing to be included, even if it doesn't affect the main story or main characters in the slightest, and I wanted to at least talk about it a bit, and I felt now was the best time. Okay, so back to the other half of New Home. I praised how the atmosphere of this area and how it uses this moment to flesh out Kara a bit, but the real meat and potatoes of this area is the gigantic monologue Flowey gives you as you explore the place. Flowey reveals the extent of his backstory at this point and explores how, before Frisk arrived, he was the one who had control over the save and load system. This is something you can find out from him in a regular playthrough as well, after killing Toriel and reloading to spare her. But this is the first time he talks about the impacts using this power had on him, and it is astonishing. Flowey, in the form he is in now, is incapable of feeling true love. He tries as hard as he can, but he just can't do it. No amount of time spent with Asgore or Toriel was able to change this. Due to his existence of being trapped in a soulless vessel, he has lost the ability to truly connect with other people around him, and it brings him to the point of suicide, where he reveals he attempted to end his own life because he didn't want to live like that. And that was the exact moment he discovered that his determination could allow him to, well, not terminate and keep on living. That is what determination is in this universe, after all. The will to keep persisting even after death. Using his powers, Flowey attempts to help everyone around him and find a way forward, but is unable to, no matter what he does. He tries every combination of every single event he can think of, but is unable to progress and unable to achieve his goal. He can't free everybody. He can't get the souls, and there just isn't any way for him to leave the underground in any capacity. Eventually, his curiosity about killing people instead gets the better of him, and he begins doing it. Originally, it was difficult for him, but it became routine and even satisfying to him. But yet, that didn't yield any new results either. In his own words, he's read every book, he's burned every book, lines of dialogue, sets of numbers. He's seen them all. In this moment, Toby Fox has managed to do the unthinkable. He has created a perfect foil to the player. Flowey, while it might appear that he's just a cartoonishly evil character, is us. He is the same as us, whether we want to admit it or not. This is the ultimate player foil. Allow me to explain. Flowey, due to in-universe reasons, is unable to form a real, meaningful connection with the people around him. He cannot truly feel love for the characters around him, and eventually, throughout his hundreds, thousands, who knows how many saves and reloads, everything around him becomes mundane, repetitive. The characters around him become like NPCs in a video game, always saying the same things, responding the same way to something, becoming increasingly predictable as he tries every single possible combination of options that the world allows him to perform. That is exactly the same as the player. Think about it. We are real-life people, and we are aware that these are characters in a video game. We cannot form a truly deep, meaningful bond with these characters as equals because we exist on a plane outside of them. They are a work of fiction. We might love the characters, love their jokes, love their personalities, but it's not true love. Not the way we love other human beings around us, friends, family, real people. At the end of the day, they are NPCs. They will repeat the same lines again and again. They are just lines of dialogue, sets of numbers, and eventually, if you keep playing the game, you'll see them all. A curious player will eventually try to kill them, to see what happens, to play that new genocide route that your friend told you about, to see what happens if you kill certain combinations of characters, to get a new ending, to see a line of dialogue you hadn't seen yet, to see a detail you didn't know about, maybe even doing the exact same thing as before because you were bored that day and wanted to play one of your favorite games again. Maybe you wanted to get to a particular boss fight, see it again for yourself, experience it again. Maybe you're a speedrunner and you want to play the game over and over again to see if you can get a faster time. Maybe you want to see every little detail the game has to offer, so you play it again and again and again, over and over and over. Lines of dialogue, sets of numbers, eventually you will see them all. The barrier that you had originally put up around yourself to not hurt these characters, the thing that made it so hard to even attempt the genocide route in the first place, it all eventually dissolves away, and in its place, you may even feel satisfied with yourself. You did it. You beat the hardest bosses in the game. You spent 5 hours trying to kill Sans, and you finally did it. Brow covered in sweat, and you pat yourself on the back. You take satisfaction in it inherently, just like Flowey. To the characters of this world, to the in-universe inhabitants, you two are no different. And I think this is absolutely a masterclass of writing and one of the most creative and interesting dynamics I have ever seen. Something that truly takes advantage of the medium in a way that just cannot be done in others. The mirror between the player and Flowey is incredibly deep writing that only serves to further enhance my appreciation for this game. And as time has gone on, that connection has only become more firm. I personally largely make content about this game. I do speedruns, I do all sorts of stuff. I replay this game constantly. And yet, Undertale accounts for my existence and behavior and uses it to reinforce a connection with a character that, on paper, should be completely unrelatable for players. Flowey is a sociopathic menace that revels in hurting others, but yet, his scenario and how he has come to view the world as nothing more than a game is inherently relatable. I don't even choose to relate to it. It is an immutable facet of reality. Undertale is a video game and I am the player. Those are objective facts that cannot be denied, and as such, I share a relationship with this antagonistic force because his circumstances force him to view the world around him in the same way I view his world, a game. This connection only deepens with time. The more videos I make, the more speedruns I do, the more I play the game again and again and again, the more I gain appreciation for this aspect of the game's amazing writing. And yet, even with this unbelievably rich concept, Undertale does not dwell on it for that long, and largely leaves it open to further interpretation by the player, as this whole New Home sequence is only about 5 to 10 minutes long before reaching the Sans fight. Undertale has this magical pace where it constantly plays with deeper questions like this, and yet it never dwells on them or make them feel stale via elaboration. It lets you do that part yourself, or as part of a deeper conversation with your friends in the community. It is absolutely excellent. I cannot state how much this one singular interaction means to me, and how I think it's some of the coolest, best writing I've ever seen in a piece of media. This isn't even including the part where Flowey pokes fun at people who couldn't actually reach this part themselves, either from the difficulty of Undyne the Undying, or because they couldn't actually get themselves to kill the characters. He directly calls out those players for watching footage of something they couldn't do themselves. In one of the game's most iconic lines, many games after this point have had similar fourth wall breaks, but this feels like one of the only times Undertale breaks the fourth wall in a way that goes further than just talking to the player or acknowledging their existence, and reaches them even when they're watching gameplay footage of someone else. This kind of stuff can get really stale really quickly if it's overdone, but Toby knew to keep it locked to just this one moment, and I really appreciate that. Of course, the parallels go further with the more obvious stuff, like him literally having the save and load ability just like we do, even mentions of various interactions he had with Papyrus and Sans during the repeated neutral endings. He, at one point, will even speak about how Sans was a massive pain for him, which is one of your only hints that you can even fight the guy at all in any ending. This stuff is a little bit more on the nose when it comes to parallels, but it just increases the depth of the character to the extreme. Flowey might not have as much screen time as others, but the depth of character he provides and the exceptional amount of presence he has is fantastic. A one-of-a-kind antagonist for a one-of-a-kind video game. So, here we are. We finally reached the end of our journey through this onion. Undertale is a special, once-in-a-lifetime experience. It means so much to me, and so much to countless people across the world. It touched the hearts of many. It created some of the most iconic and memorable characters, music, and scenarios in recent memory. Sans, in particular, is so recognizable at this point that he's made it into Super Smash Bros. As a costume. Megalovania even got played for the Pope at one point. I mean, that's just goodness. I barely even elaborated on this during the video, but I want to put it here at the end of the video. Undertale was a landmark game for representation. Many people's first exposure to groups of people who are different from them came from this game, and it absolutely nailed the execution. Undertale so effortlessly includes prominently queer characters in the narrative in a way that feels so incredibly organic, and this was such an important step for many people. I've met so many people who discovered themselves because they played this game, or found themselves strongly relating to one of the characters. Hell, this game basically introduced me, a fairly socially awkward and generally boxed-in teenager at the time, to the concept of non-binary individuals through characters like Napstablook. And lo and behold, here I am, years later, openly non-binary and truly happy with my own identity for the first time in my life. This aspect of the game is so incredibly important, but yet Undertale never revels in it. It just treats their existence as a completely natural thing in such a seamless way. The game becoming hugely popular never once changed this approach. But a lot of times, when something becomes as beloved and popular as this game, it's easy to lose sight of why that thing became popular in the first place. And the reason I wanted to make this video, I wanted to really write down what this game means to me, and why I feel like it's so special and incredible. And I hope after this absolute marathon of a video, you can appreciate the game like I do, too, because Undertale is nothing short of one of the greatest games of all time, and a landmark of this generation. Toby Fox crafted a timeless, incredible masterpiece that will go on to influence millions of people now and in the future. And for that, I just want to say thank you. Thank you to Toby and Temmie and the entire Undertale team for creating a game that changed my life, for creating such a brilliant and incredible game in general, and for continuing to create such incredible and inspiring works of art that bring myself and millions of other people incredible happiness. And I want to say thank you to all of you as well. Not just for sticking through this absolute endurance test of a video, but for the incredible amount of support I've gotten over the years to the point where I can even make a video like this. Thank you, every single one of you. And with that, I hope you all have a great night, and take care.